Hey guys, Sanjay from TechRespect here to do a bit of a comparison between the Galaxy S3 and the Google Nexus 4. Now I've spent about almost 5 days now with the Nexus 4 and I feel I've been with it long enough to do a little comparison before my review, which should be coming out in the next few days, probably after my midterm. So let's get right down to it. So the thing that matters to most of us is the screen. The Galaxy S3 has a beautiful 1280 by 720 4.8 inch beautiful Super AMOLED HD screen. It does have the Pentel matrix that almost all AMOLEDs have, except for the Super AMOLED Plus in the Galaxy S2, and that does make things a little bit less appealing, though most people won't notice it. It's still a very nice display. The Nexus 4 has a 1280 by 768 4.7 inch LCD IPS display. So a Super AMOLED uses a backlight, does not use a backlight. It has self-illuminating pixels, while the LCD screen has a backlight, so it should, I think it draws more power, but it does make for some really nice accurate colors, and when you do look at the screens together, I do find that the the IPS display is much better. Although the best display still, I believe, is on the HTC One X, which does have a display that's incredibly beautiful. But these two phones both have really good displays, but Google's or LG's Nexus 4 does get the win for this one. Taking a look at the body for each device, the Galaxy S3 has a very odd looking profile when you first look at it. It has different shaped corners on the top and bottom, mostly probably because of the Apple lawsuits, but it has a curved glass design that has the glass folding or bending away at the corners. Makes adding screen protectors a bit difficult, but it makes for a very nice feeling when you're playing with it, or when you're just using it. The phone is extremely thin, and it does have a slight curve, although it's not very noticeable. It has this plastic but gray metallic looking band around the phone, and the back cover is removable, which allows for replacing the battery and micro SD and SIM card and so on. Google Nexus 4 has a similar curved glass feeling towards the edges, just as the Galaxy S3 does, but it has more of a subtle but refined finish, and it's flush with the edges, so it feels very nice to just use the phone when you're using it. You really notice how smooth and nice the screen feels. It's quite a bit thicker than the Galaxy S3, and we have glass on the back as well as on the front. We also have this awesome looking reflective thingamajiggy that they call, I can't remember what they call it, but it does look good. It might look like glitter on the camera, but it has more of a holographic feeling that is very nice. So don't think it looks like glitter, but yeah. The corners have a soft touch like finish, which is also really nice to hold. Really adds to the experience of holding the phone. And with the LG or Google Nexus 4, we have on-screen buttons as opposed to the Galaxy S3's capacitive buttons over here. Now, one thing I have noticed with the on-screen and capacitive buttons is that when, say, you're lying in bed and you want to type kind of like this on your phone. I do find myself touching these two capacitive buttons very often, and it does get very annoying. And towards the end, I really got really sick of this phone, mostly thanks to these two capacitive buttons. The home button feels really nice. It's clicky and has a good tactile response. But these two capacitive buttons can be quite a deal breaker, especially as soon as I moved to the Nexus 4. I found myself trying to avoid touching these bottoms, and then I found that I could actually put my fingers there, my palms, let it rest there while I used the phone, and it was just much more comfortable, and it felt good to use the phone that way. So it's unfortunate that the Galaxy S3 has those capacitive buttons there. If it was moved slightly up, would have been more symmetric of a phone as well. But that would be that. Again, it's tough to pick between the two as to which body or design is better. But it's gonna have to go for the Nexus 4, mainly because of those and how good the screen feels. So. Now, as for cameras, the camera on the Galaxy S3 can be accessed from the lock screen by putting a finger down on the lock screen and then turning it horizontally. That will launch the camera. And in the camera application we have the usual buttons, the buttons that can select your shooting mode and effect and all that stuff, switch the camera and switch to video pretty easily, and it's pretty simple, quick to learn, quick for anyone to learn, and it's quite a decent camera. We'll be talking about picture quality later. Launching the camera with the Nexus 4 is also possible from the lock screen. All you have to do is move in from the bezel, and that will open up the camera application. Things are a little less conventional here. We have no buttons at all. We can adjust the flash from here, and the camera or panorama, all those things are there. It's much simpler is what it is, but to get to settings, you press and hold, and then you can switch your camera mode, your exposure, go to settings and all those things, set up what kind of daylight you're shooting in, and to focus on something you pretty much just tap and it shows a little animation, like a focusing animation, and it's quite cool. A feature that was added with this camera is the circle sphere or sphere camera or whatever you want to call it, which allows you to take panorama-like pictures up, down, left, right, which will then stitch it. It will have the picture stitched, and you can have a Google's Street View like photo of something. So that's pretty cool, although it is pretty inconsistent with its stitching. Both cameras on these phones take very good pictures, so you can't really go wrong with them. But the Galaxy S3 does take slightly better pictures. The colors are more natural looking. On the Nexus 4 they're slightly more washed out, which is kind of unfortunate, but it would be hard to notice which one is better, although the edge does go to the Galaxy S3. Both phones have excellent call quality, and it's tough for me to differentiate between the two because they're so similar, or well, they are really similar and both equally good. So this is going to be a tie. You won't go wrong again with either phone here. So both phone speakers can be very loud, so you can't go wrong there either. These two phones do have a lot of similarities. But anyway, the Nexus 4 speaker is placed in a position where you would cover it with your palm, while the Galaxy S3 has it towards the top, and you don't find yourself covering. At most you'd cover a flash, but you wouldn't be if you're left or right-handed. Maybe if you're holding it with your right hand you probably cover the speaker, but it's less likely than with the Nexus 4, which has the speaker right there. So speaker wise, I'd have to give it to the Galaxy S3. So speaking about battery life, both phones have 2100 milliamp hour batteries here, and while they do have the same number of milliamp hours, I have found that the Nexus 4 will last me up to 2 days, almost 2 days, with everyday medium use with a lot of texting and a lot of browsing. And the same amount of use on the Galaxy S3 would give me 1 day, maybe a bit more, maybe 1.5 days. So the Nexus 4 is quite an improvement, which is good since you cannot remove and replace the battery. But the Galaxy S3 has the option of getting a new battery, a higher capacity battery, or something like that. So again, I would have to say it's a tie. But if you're looking at battery life on on a stock level, where both phones have their originally handed out their original batteries, the Nexus 4 definitely wins. So that is something to consider as well. So moving on to firmware, on the Nexus 4 we have Android 4.2.1, and on the Galaxy S3 we have 4.1.2. Now Samsung hasn't released 4.2 for the Galaxy S3 just yet, because they do have to skin Android and all that stuff. But we do see how much of an improvement the 4.2 update is on the Nexus 4. You can move through things very smoothly. There's no stuttering or lagging. On the Galaxy S3, that's more or less the same as well, but we do see some lagging here and there. And it's not all the time, but like right now, you don't really see it. But when you do have a lot of widgets on, it can tend to get laggy, not to the point where it would be a deal breaker, of course. But there you go. On the Galaxy S3, though, we do have Samsung's interface or skinning of Android, which is called TouchWiz Nature UX, and it does add some personality to the phone. It makes it Samsung's own device, but it is also quite graphically intensive, as you can see, and that adds to that factor where you might see some stuttering later on. Now with TouchWiz, you do also get quite a bit of convenience features, if you want to call it that. You can swipe your palm over the screen to take a screenshot, or you can, if you're texting someone, you can just lift the phone up to your ear and the phone will call that person. So these are really minor things, but they can be quite useful, or you can just get used to this kind of thing and kind of miss it on the Nexus 4, but definitely not a deal breaker. It doesn't do much. Samsung also has quick settings on the notification drawer, and I believe Samsung was one of the first companies to do that. Maybe it was HTC. I think it was Samsung though. And the Nexus 4 has brought that as well with Android 4.2. You just pull down the notification bar with 2 fingers and it opens up a quick settings panel, if you want to call it that. So both are very convenient phones to use as well. So in terms of hardware, on the Galaxy S3 we have a for the international version, which is what I have here, 1.4 GHz Exynos 4412 quad-core processor with 1 gigabyte of RAM. In the US, you have the dual-core S4 processor, Qualcomm S4 processor with 2 gigabytes of RAM, but they both have similar performance. On the Nexus 4, of course, we have the Qualcomm S4 Pro, which is quad-core with 2 gigabytes of RAM, clocked at 1.5 gigahertz as well. So there's a difference between these two quad-core. Both phones here are quad-core, but the Nexus 4 is much more powerful because it has a better manufacturing process. It has a better architecture as well, while the Galaxy S3 has an older generation, 4 older generation CPU cores, in layman's terms, of course. CPU cores, while the Nexus 4 has 4 new generation CPU cores. It's like 2nd gen Core i5 and 3rd gen Core i5, if you want to call it that. But this is much more powerful, and you can feel it with boot times, and it's tough to gauge it because Samsung does have the skin version of Android here, so that might add to the timing factor. But this does boot faster. It runs games much easier. There are less load times. When you turn on the screen, I don't know if it'll work here, but turns on instantaneously. This takes a little bit of time to turn on. It's just the little things. the really powerful processor does help in the Nexus 4 to make Android a better experience for whoever uses it. The main hardware drawback, of course, would be on the Nexus 4 would be that it does not have expandable storage or removable battery. On the Galaxy S3 we have both of that, so that can be a huge factor for anyone who's looking to buy a new phone. Both phones have LED indicator lights. On the Nexus 4 we have one here, and on the Galaxy S3 we have one up here. They're both equally good. You can change the color with an app from the market, and it adds to the personalization factor of the phone. Usually I wouldn't talk about affordability because everything is around the same price when it comes to phones. Not everything, but most high-end phones are around $600, $700 including tax. But the Nexus 4 is going to be around $400 including tax, which is quite a big deal because as high of a premium phone as it is, it's difficult to even believe that it's only $350 plus tax. So, and it is not a cheap looking device either. It has glass on the front, glass on the back, nice soft touch band around the phone. It's probably plastic in there. The buttons feel great, and it feels like a premium device, and is only being sold for, I'd go as far as saying, a fraction of what it's worth. The Galaxy S3 is sold at a much higher price right now. It's definitely going to go down with the Galaxy S4 when that comes out. But the Nexus 4 is a much better buy in the end. When you think about it, you pay a lot less, and you do get it feels like a better phone, but you do get that factor where you do have glass on the back and glass on the front, so you might break it, and that would not be very fun. So the Galaxy S3 is more expensive, but it's built out of plastic. Not that it feels very cheap. It feels nice. It's smooth and comfortable to hold, if you want to call it that. But the Nexus 4 is definitely a better buy, as we've seen throughout the video. It's more powerful. It's better looking. It's good to use, and it also has LTE if you live in a country that supports it. I know the Galaxy S3 has LTE in the US or Canadian varieties, but the international version does not support it, and the Nexus 4 does not support it out of the box. But with some modifications, you can get LTE in Canada or any place that uses those special bands. I'm not sure what the bands are, but the Nexus 4 can have LTE, so it's a much better buy. And yeah, the Nexus 4 here definitely is the clear winner. So thank you guys for watching this video on the comparison between the Galaxy S3 and Nexus 4. I did not use a script, and I believe I did an okay job. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.